Hello, WorldCiv106. I'm here at Hollywood Road Park in Hong Kong. People are doing Tai Chi, having conversations, eating quietly. You have an online professor trying to make an announcement here. It may rain soon. Well, hopefully, let me finish this video. There's a lot of sun, maybe too much sun coming in for this announcement, but forgive me. Anyhow, it's fitting that I have been in Thailand. I went to the Philippines, and now I'm in Hong Kong. When we are now covering the history of China and Japan, Korea, and a very little bit of Southeast Asia. And right now, as I have been, as you know, I've been traveling, and I've been spending, so far I spent most of my time in Thailand, and I've been really studying more on the history. I just have not been able yet to put together a proper revised lecture on incorporating Southeast Asian history into the section. I just have some small clips. It's very insufficient for the topic, but it's difficult. And what I've discovered is that there's a reason. The fact of the matter is that getting history on Southeast Asia is a much more difficult task than, let's say, China or Japan. But I'm going to back up for a little bit, and I believe I mentioned this in some of my lectures, but I want to say something. I remember being in my Making of Modern East Asia class at UC Santa Cruz, and the professor saying that most departments are dominated by people who are experts on China or Japan. And countries like Korea get kind of marginalized, even though there's no reason to marginalize Korea. And Korea has such an integrated history with the other two. And so when he put together a set of lectures and discussions on Korea, he was mentioning to us that this is not something that's very normal, and that this is often really just overlooked if I was going to take a class like this, which is a shame. And so I realize now the importance of that. And now I have really thought about the problem of the lack of information of integrating Southeast Asian history better into this is relevant, especially to, when we talk about Asia, we can incorporate India. So, for example, Thailand is heavily influenced by the Indian court culture. Angkor Wat in Cambodia was a Hindu. It's a Hindu site, and even in Thailand, I see statues of Ganesh everywhere. Ganesh, the Hindu god, is integrated into the Buddhist religion. The kings of Thailand are referred to as Rama. That's their king name. So the last king that's very popular in Thailand is Rama IX, the ninth Rama. This is related to India. Now, a book I'm reading on Southeast Asia talks about how Vietnam, on the other hand, has a long history, although in conflict with China, of the Confucian court system being a major influence on Vietnam. And so, unfortunately for us, this class isn't going to be able to get the exact proper history of a more fuller history of Southeast Asia, which I've now been experiencing, and I feel really bummed about that. But I still don't quite have enough information for myself to really create the lecture that I would like to. But I just want you to be aware of that. So, for example, also, how I was in Thailand, and I'll just tell you a little story. So, my cousin, who I was living with the first time, his neighbor is a couple. It's a European man with a Thai woman who is what Thai people call a katoi. And I'm not really sure this is a politically correct term. In fact, maybe it's not, but the whole debate about politically correct terms in Thailand is non-existent for the most part. And I'm also having a hard time trying to figure out that kind of thing, like what would be appropriate on my end, what kind of terms to use when this is not even a discussion for the most part. In any case, she is what we'd call a transgender person, and in Thailand, I was shocked how many Muslims I saw in Thailand. One, because there were a lot of women in head coverings that were clearly Thai people ethnically, and how many lady boys, as they're also called. Lady boys are katoi, and as I said, there was quite a bit. Well, there's a big spider here that I wanted to go away. Okay, thank you. Anyways, so I found one book in Thailand in English called The Third Sex, Katoi, Thailand's Lady Boys. And this book, it's an Oxford professor. It seems to be like it's lacking a lot, and he doesn't really... But there's a reason why I want to mention this. As I was reading this book, trying to understand, this history here, he even basically says, man, this is not an easy history to try to... It's not easy to do history of anything in Southeast Asia. And part of that is because in the 18th century, almost all the records of Thailand were destroyed in a battle between Burma/Myanmar and Ayutthaya. And basically, Bangkok is formulated sometime around after the U.S. Revolution. So Thailand's archives are very limited, and their written history comes much later. And so trying to understand many things about their culture, how far back they go, what association they have with different religious traditions or not, is not so easy to do. What is interesting is this book talks about Buddhism and gender, and talks about how one of the texts actually has mentions of 4 different genders created at the beginning of time. So remember, in Judaism we have Adam and Eve. Well, it's a much more complex creation story, according to this book. If you look at the large volumes of Buddhist texts on gender. And what's interesting is that seems to Southeast Asia seems to have many different cultural customs that are the same, but they changed based on Islam, Christianity in the Philippines, and then Buddhism. And also, there's still the remnants of Hinduism in Bali in Indonesia. So it's a complex history, very rich. And this announcement is just me trying to say that, I hope that you get a chance to try to explore some of these topics in a broader way as well. We're covering a lot of history each week over many things, and you're not going to be able to remember it all. But I'm hoping to get you kind of interested and to be lifelong students in these things. And so I just kind of wanted to bring in some of these topics like this to get you stimulated into thinking about how much more we can look into this vast history. And why did I bring up this whole Katoi, lady boy, transgender situation? Well, here in the United States, there's a big discussion about, what to make of this topic when it hasn't been a topic for very long here. And I'm merely pointing out that I realize is that this kind of, if you look anywhere in the world where there's a social set of behavior and something seems to be different to one group, these topics seem to have always been around in different societies, but handled in different ways. And that's the part that I'm finding very interesting, because it doesn't seem like now most people really have a problem with the idea of a transgender in Thailand, but they also are not, it's also not politically correct based on it's, the way that they're handling it has nothing, it looks very different than the left and the right would handle it in the United States, in other words. And that's interesting as well. So anyhow, I hope I'm not just babbling too much, or I hope that you find this information, interesting and helpful to be incorporated into your topics. Here I am in Hong Kong, and this is just one interesting thing to say as well. I wouldn't be able to make this video like this if I was on the mainland. And in the next several years, as Hong Kong gets integrated back into the mainland, something like this may not be possible as well, which is a whole nother interesting topic that has to deal with politics, which I will not get into right now. But I hope you all have a great week. And again, contact me if you have any questions.